Hello and welcome back to another Royal Reviewer episode. And oh my goodness, what a 24 hours it has been since my last video went live. Even as I was recording my last video, stories were still coming out from the leaked memoir of Prince Harry, of course, Spare. So we're going to be talking about more revelations that have come out since my previous video. If you haven't seen that already, I deal with all of the initial claims that Prince Harry has made in his book, so I will leave that linked in the description box below. But we're going to move on, and we're probably not even going to be able to cover all of the stories because there are so many. I have made literally a big massive list of things to talk about, and I've tried to find quotes and things all in one place, so we'll be trying to read some actual quotes from the book. But there are a lot of themes to deal with. It is important at the outset of this video to make it clear that, of course, we are hearing only one side of the story. Of course, the royal family, Buckingham Palace, has, as of yet, refused to comment or make comment. I don't even think we've had any sources or saying, speaking to the media to clarify things. We may get that a little bit later, but I certainly think that the royal family would do best to do what they have been so far, which is, of course, keeping a dignified silence, at least until the book is officially released next week. And then, of course, they will know exactly what they are dealing with. I think it's important not to comment, if at all, too soon, because then you may end up having to make corrections as more and more things leak. Like I say, things are coming out all the time. The book, of course, was leaked in Spanish, so it's taking a while for things to translate. Also, there's a lot to process. I mean, even myself reading all this now, it is like connecting the dots. It is like a dot to dot, a massive royal dot to dot, and stories that we heard from 3-4 years ago, we are now being able to begin, at least from one side and one angle, to piece those things together. I will say at the outset of this video, I think this is a massively backfiring exercise on Prince Harry's behalf. I definitely think this is something that he will regret if he is not yet regretting already. It just opens things up, and it opens up that level of scrutiny. And the one thing that Harry has not been very good at up until now is, I suppose, the accountability of the justification of what you're saying. If you say one thing and you put it out there in the public, it's going to be scrutinized, it's going to be fact checked, and that is kind of what is happening. Also, I think we're definitely going to cover the main revelation of the day, and also a few more kind of silly, I suppose, almost light-hearted ones, although they do carry, to me, I suppose, a bit more of a deeper meaning, because you shouldn't be talking and revealing private information, private details about members of your family. It's up to them whether they want to say those details. So let's kind of start by going through. The main one, I think, of the day to kind of unpick is Harry's remarks about his time in Afghanistan. Now, of course, we know that Harry was granted permission. I'm just tilting my glasses so you can't see the reflection. He was granted permission to do what William couldn't do. Let's make it very clear that Prince Harry, as the Spare, has been given a lot more freedom than what Prince William ever has. I'm sure William would have loved is a bit of a wrong word, but loved to have served his country further in terms of being able to go into the military. Of course, William ended up serving and doing his duty in a different way. He was, after his military training, he went to become an air ambulance rescue pilot, which of course has its own merits. But Harry was the one that was allowed secretly at first to go to Afghanistan and actually do a few tours of duty, where, you know, we only imagined, I suppose, what he got up to. Now, of course, this is his story. He does have the right to tell it, but as always, it's about choices. Just because you have the right of freedom of speech to say something doesn't necessarily mean it's the right choice to do it. So Harry has claimed that he killed 25 people, for 25 Afghanistan's members of the Taliban, whilst he was in active duty. Now, He also said and likened them to kind of taking out chess pieces on a chessboard. Now, this is not untypical military thinking. The military, of course, are trained to be highly skilled individuals that fight in war zones, and unfortunately, there are casualties of war, and purely, I suppose, for mental health purposes, they are taught that perhaps they are more like chess pieces, and of course, a lot of military people come out of the military having PTSD, lots of mental health issues. That's kind of just one way, I suppose, for a military person to compartmentalize. And I think Harry has shown that he has compartmentalized, I suppose, what he did while he was out there. So for me, this is not necessarily about what he did while he was out there. He was in active duty. He was doing what was expected of him. He was following orders. So to me, that's not the issue. The issue is that he's revealed how many targets they reckon he took out, and that has made him a bigger target and a bigger threat from the Taliban. He's actually literally, put his head up above the parapet and gone, "Hello, Taliban. This is how many people of your soldiers that I've taken out, and hello, look at me." That is so unwise. I literally cannot believe he has made himself a bigger target. One of his bones of contention about the royal family was the loss of his police protection. Of course, he funds his own personal protection now, but nothing is as good as the royal protection. And yeah, he's just made himself a bigger target. He's put himself, his family, other family members that are associated with him, other military personnel. Perhaps the Taliban had sort of, things had died down a bit. He's now literally just put himself front and center in their minds, and of course the Taliban has actually reacted. I'm just going to go to an article and kind of read a little bit about it because yeah, the Taliban have already expressed their fury after Prince Harry revealed he killed 25 enemy chess pieces during his deployment in Afghanistan. Speaking to the Mail Online, the infamously brutal militants taunted the prince, saying they had the last laugh over the West and the big mouth loser, yes, big mouth loser, Duke of Sussex, by recapturing the country in 2021. The Taliban said that while their chess pieces are the ultimate victors of the conflict, well, debatable, Harry fled to his grandmother's palace and is now struggling to maintain a place in the royal family, of course, in response to the things that Prince Harry has said in his books. Yeah, so basically, he is now fully back on their radar, and I think, oh my goodness. Yeah, he said, they also continue, there's more. He is a loser and scared to go to a combat zone. We made history by kicking him out, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that's just their spin. But whatever. They basically they know what he said. He's put a target on his head. And, well, I don't know if he's clever enough to have done it, to try and manipulate the British government or not. I don't know. But certainly, one way of thinking is that maybe he included that to purposefully make himself a bigger target. Because, of course, as we know, they are going through whether or not officially he should, the decision to strip his taxpayer British funded police protection should have ever happened. So if this is some way of Harry trying to up his, I mean, do you think it's his way of trying to up his target status? Do you think he's purposefully done this? Do you think he's clever enough to have purposely done this to try and make out that he is, an even bigger target to try and get the protection back? I mean, that's one way of thinking about it. Or it's just that he's incredibly naive in putting out this level of information. Most military people that have gone through similar things to Prince Harry. And by the way, um, you know, I think everyone can be terribly thankful to people that risk their lives and serve with a level of duty that Prince Harry and other military personnel do, not just for our country, but all the way around the world as well. We owe them a lot, and it's at times like Remembrance Sunday, when we wear the poppies, where we remember not just those soldiers that have lost their lives in battle, but the ones that served, made it through, and are still continuing to serve. So we respect that, and lots of military people know, or it's not a rule. You don't have to not talk about it, but you certainly don't publicize it. You don't make a big thing about how many people you've taken out, for example, because it puts that target on your head, especially if you take to social media to do it. So I think it's just very unwise. In fact, some might say it's just blatantly stupid. It is just a complete bout of stupidity, and I just can't believe that that was actually in there. It really is, yeah. Um, it's it. Yeah, I am speechless. I am literally speechless by it. Anyway, let's move on. Another thing that I think people have been talking about is obviously the fact that Meghan may have her own book out, and a lot of royal commentators have had access to the book or the translations have so far kind of found out, I suppose, what's not in the book, or what appears at this point not to be in the book, also speaks volumes. So we know that in the Oprah interview, um, Harry and Meghan kind of tackled the issue of the racism that they feel they experienced at the hands of the British press, but also within the institution of monarchy. That's not something that we're going to be discussing here and now today further. But people have noticed that so far what's come out has not been furthering any kind of accusations or allegations of that nature. They haven't been tackling that subject, which perhaps indicates that is that a theme that Meghan might be exploring if the rumours are true that she will eventually come out and put a book. That's just something I think that we should consider. Also, what's come out is the alarming, I suppose, amount of drug and alcohol use that Harry kind of experienced during his wild child years. Now, we know from reports in the media at the times, Harry was often seen stumbling out of clubs looking very bleary eyed and worse for wear. So I think we always kind of had thoughts that maybe that's the sort of thing that he was doing, drugs, alcohol. But now he's obviously clarified things, and he took hardcore Class A drugs from the age of 18. Um, I think the first time he said he did it was at someone's house during a shooting trip. Um, so yeah, it just goes to show, I think, also how lost he was back then. Of course, back when he was 17, it wasn't a million miles away from that fateful night when he lost his mother. He also, in the book, I'm just thinking, all these revelations are popping up into my mind. Whilst he was in Paris one time, he actually got his chauffeur to drive him through the Alma Tunnel, of course, the tunnel where Diana's Mercedes hit the 13th pillar, several times, I think 3 times, at the same speed that she was going through the tunnel when she lost her life, 65 miles per hour. And he did this 3 times. He thought that doing this might bring him some kind of closure. He then revealed that it didn't. Um, and I think he said something along the lines of, in his mind, he always expected the tunnel to be longer, more daunting, more scary, but it was actually a lot shorter than what he thought. And I think that kind of trip compounded in his mind that perhaps someone going through the tunnel at 65 miles per hour shouldn't have had happened what happened. Of course, I think he's kind of left out all the different variables and things, but we kind of link that to what I spoke about in the previous I think it was the previous chat, or it was the previous live chat that I did, where we spoke about Harry contacting a journalist to kind of launch, I suppose, further investigations privately into his mother's passing. So, yeah. He also talks about his final words to the Queen. So, in a particularly moving passage, he describes how he learned of the Queen's passing after checking the BBC News. So, there was a lot of speculation at the time about how he found out, who told him. He says he found it out on the news first, which shows that family members, including Charles, didn't contact him first. But there was also rumours at the time that he was particularly uncontactable. So that's important to remember as well, because I think the other side of the story that I think we got some sources disclosing was that the royal family tried to contact him many times, but it was very difficult to get through. Upon arriving at Balmoral, he was greeted by Anne. So of course, Anne was there. She was there when the Queen passed away, who then took him upstairs. So we know that the Queen at least made it upstairs to bed when she was taken ill, to a room where the late sovereign, was lying. He writes, I advanced with uncertainty and then saw her. I stayed still, watching her carefully for a good while. I whispered that I hoped she was happy and that she was with grandfather now. I said that I admired her for having carried out her duties until the end. Of course, he was referring to the Platinum Jubilee and the welcoming in and departure of the prime ministers. I think death has been a theme that has just plagued Harry's life from the moment that he lost his mother. He's slowly seen family members that he loved and respected. Well, I know people are going to say, well, did he respect the Queen in the end after all the things that he put her through? And I think he may be feeling a little bit regretful. He should be feeling regretful about the things that he put his grandfather through and the Queen during their later years. Let's not forget the Oprah interview. He was filming that at the time that his grandfather was in hospital, and the royal family at that time knew that he was unlikely to get better. It was, in effect, end of life care. So they were filming that during then. Then, of course, all the revelations that came out, during the final, I suppose, year and a half, 2 years of the Queen's life. Someone has commented in the media that I think knew the Queen, that they are at least happy that she's not here to see this, because they think that she would be absolutely kind of shocked and appalled at the level of detail and disdain that Harry holds for the institution of monarchy and his very privileged life that he has led. Also, I suppose what's coming through in all of these excerpts from the book is the level of animosity, possibly even jealousy, that Harry holds against his brother. It's not William's fault that he was born first. That is the system. Harry has always known, and I'm not saying that it's a good thing to always know that you were born to sort of be the spare, but Harry must surely know that his mother and father, both loved him. They both expressed their love in different ways. Diana was a lot more tactile. We saw photographs of them, hugging, and she was a lot more modern. Harry's father, now King Charles, is not a modern man, is he? He has quite modern ways, I suppose, of thinking. He was the first to kind of champion, really publicly all of the environmental concerns. So he's quite forward thinking. So some could say that he was quite modern thinking in that respect. But in terms of, I suppose, behaviour, the way that he was brought up, it was a completely different generation. Of course, Diana was much younger than Charles. So Diana was a lot more modern in her approach, a lot more huggy, tactile. Charles isn't that. That's not who Charles is. But both parents loved him. So I'm sure, if he must have felt love from his parents. Um, so, so yeah, I think, Harry was also kind of criticizing in almost his father for his lack of being tactile. He recalls the occasion when he was told about his mother's passing. Charles actually came into their bedrooms, and I always imagined, I don't know why, but I always imagined William and Harry, I suppose, sharing a room, like a really big, massive room. But it turns out they had separate bedrooms. William apparently had the larger bedroom, which apparently was another bone of contention for Harry. Harry recalls something about William having more wardrobes in a bigger room. I don't know, giving off very kind of Harry Potter vibes with, Dudley Dursley upstairs in the bedroom and Harry Potter in the cupboard. I'm sure it wasn't quite like that. But anyway, not all bedrooms are equal sized, and I'm sure, most people, when their elder sibling moves out, they then move up to the larger bedroom. Anyway, that's kind of a bit of a nonsense story. So Harry recalls the moment his father came in. I'm not sure who was told first, William or Harry, but Charles sat down and did break the news that Diana had been in an accident. I think first of all, they didn't know how seriously she'd been injured, and then obviously it was revealed that she had passed. And Harry remembers not getting a hug from his father, even in that occasion. I just think two very generationally different approaches to parenting, Diana and Charles. So Harry was obviously, I suppose, craving that tactile approach that he had from Diana, and whether or not he ever had that since remains to be seen. But William was treated in the same way. Another thing that came out in the revelations, I'm literally just remembering them as things come in. So I do apologise for the veering from subject to subject, but the one thing that I felt was, really thoughtful was from Lady Sarah McCorquodale, of course, Diana's sister. She travelled with Charles to Paris, and she actually thought to cut locks of Diana's hair after she'd passed away, and she placed them in two boxes, one for William and one for Harry. And, of course, I think that is kind of very simple. It's very sad. It's very sad and it's very somber, but it must bring at least a little bit of comfort. They can't ever touch or hug Diana again, but they do have this lock of hair, which I'm sure is a very treasured possession of theirs. They can open the box. They can, they can hold the hair. They can hold it up to themselves. They can talk to it if they want to. So it must bring, I suppose, a little bit of peace. I just thought that was a really lovely thing for her to do. So another story that I remember that just kind of springs to mind, revelation from the latest memoir, is of course Prince Harry taking Meghan to see his mother's graveside. And I remember reporting on it at the time. I think it was 2017. And that was kind of like a big news story. But of course, we didn't know exactly what happened on the island. And a lot of people still have this misconception that Diana is not buried on the island. She most definitely is. And William and Harry do go to the island to pay their respects to their mother. They were there when the coffin was lowered into the ground. So I don't think there's any conspiracy there. Anyway, Harry reveals in his memoir what happened on the island. So he had his own private time with his mother. Then he says that he sensed that Meghan wanted to have her private time with his mother. So she has a few minutes and he comes back and she's got her hands on Diana's gravestone and she's kind of, I suppose, asking for guidance and clarity. I mean, I don't quite know exactly what at that time she wanted guidance and clarity on, but it does seem, I don't know, I can't imagine Catherine doing that, can you? But anyway, just another revelation about Harry's mother. Again, he has the right to do so, but is it in necessarily good taste, especially when you're being paid for that information? Let me just scroll down and see some other. Yeah, I think what I would like to do is to talk about the kind of Harry, Meghan, Catherine, William feud, if you like, in a separate video because there's quite a lot of information on it to piece together. So I would like to talk about that perhaps in the next video. Reactions from American media. So there are reports coming back that leading American media commentators are beginning to distance themselves from Prince Harry as the Duke faces an extraordinary backlash over his upcoming tell-all autobiography, and of course all the interviews that are due to come out. We didn't know about I think there's going to be a fourth interview. I don't think we knew about that initially. Is that to kind of try and counteract the negative publicity that's coming at Harry? So CNN anchor Don Lemon is among those in the States to slam the royal, branding him gauche for choosing to publish claims his brother Prince William physically attacked him in his bombshell book, Spare, saying it's just not done. I mean, I think I would agree. These are very personal, private moments that I don't think are necessarily meant for public consumption. I said yesterday, and I'll say it again, the fact, that Harry claims that he's reached out for reconciliation, and from his point of view hasn't got anything back, although we've kind of shown that that is not true, at least from what the other sources are saying. It just kind of goes to show how much work there is to do behind the scenes, rather than, okay, this is enough, this is my limit, I'm now going to go public. There shouldn't never be this kind of threat to go public, because that then would become an ultimatum. So has Harry in effect almost given his family this kind of ultimatum: you toe the line, you do what I want you to do, or else I'm going to reveal this is what I'm going to do. It's a bit like a toddler throwing toys out of a pram. Is Harry kind of virtue signaling that this is what I can do if you don't toe the line? I might even do more. Or there is, of course, the threat of Meghan's book to come out. So anyway, what was his name? Don Lemon says he searched for a word to describe Harry's move before fully describing it as gauche, meaning unsophisticated or lacking in grace. Everyone has a family, he said, before asking rhetorically, I have arguments with my family. Am I going to put that out there for the whole world to see? That's a sentiment that I echoed in a previous video. Anyway, like I said, also lots of former military personnel, and including those that served with Harry, have condemned him for publishing such details about, for example, his military kind of conquests. I'm just scrolling through again more. Right. I suppose I'm going to talk now about a very weird story. We had the revelations about Harry's virginity being how Harry's virginity was lost. I can't remember whether I spoke about that in yesterday's video, so I'll just quickly cover it again. Harry reveals that he lost his virginity behind a pub in a field with an older lady, who then proceeded to smack his bottom or something of that nature. And he felt like, he described it as mounting her and all the rest. Okay, we didn't need to know that, Harry. We did not need to know anything about that whatsoever. It conjures up images which I'd rather not have in my head, to be quite honest. But there, he went there, he said it. I mean, it just goes to show. I mean, why would you want to include that? I don't know. Anyway, it's his private moment, which he has now shared with the world. I personally didn't need to hear that. I don't think it adds anything to any kind of narrative, whichever side of the fence you might be on. Anyway, he also goes into more graphic kind of revelations of the nature that he and his brother are both circumcised. Now, again, I don't think I needed to know about the Winkies of the royals. I mean, Harry's revealed that he calls William Willie. I mean, it's now a circumcised Willie, isn't it? And which is a little bit unusual because unless for religious reasons, here in the UK, it's not particularly common to be circumcised. It's nothing that shouldn't be done, but it's mostly only done for medical concerns or a certain type of religious belief. Most people in the UK, most men, are not circumcised, as I know, is more the norm in other countries. So I was a little bit, I suppose, Yeah, I suppose I was a little bit shocked that they were circumcised. Surprised. I was surprised that they were circumcised. Not that it matters. I don't really care whether their Winkies are circumcised or not. Although there are both nude photographs on the internet of both princes where you can see their Winkies, their royal crown jewels, shall I say. There is a photograph out there, and they aren't doctored photographs, they are real photographs. Prince William was photographed at a polo match having a wee, where he does have his appendage out. And yeah, I mean, from memory, I mean, again, these are images that are kind of seared into your brain. Um, it could have looked circumcised, so I think the claim possibly might be true. I mean, certainly don't know why you would lie about it anyway. And then, of course, there are Harry's strip poker photos where, you know, there are the uncensored versions out there. Again, I can't really make out. But anyway, for years I've called William unofficially Big Willie. Um, and, you know, I've seen the photo. There is also a photo out there of the Duke of Edinburgh. Somebody up-kilted him when he was sat down. I think it was at the Braemar Games one year. And let's just say that the Duke of Edinburgh was a true Scotsman in the sense that he wasn't wearing underwear. Again, you know, please don't Google them because these are images that are then seared in your head. I can't get them out, literally. They are imprinted and burned forever. So Google at your own risk. Let this be a disclaimer. Don't do it, my loves. Just don't do it. Anyway, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, was asked by a journalist trying to bring him into the conversation, and he was very tight-lipped about Prince Harry's comments. He said, "I think, as you would expect, it is not appropriate for me to comment on matters to do with the royal family." Very diplomatic, Rishi, and probably best to stay out of it. Um, Harry also reveals that it was a mistake that he either YouTubed or Googled whatever Meghan's sex scenes from Suits. Um, he says, let's have a look. Did he say anything or did he just. Yeah, he said it was a mistake to look up Meghan's sex scenes in Suits. I mean, you know, if you know that you're the type that would get worked up over that, why would you do it? I mean, he may have been curious. I don't know, but it just seems a bit, again, just a bit of a silly story to put in there. Um, I'm just scrolling down again. Ooh, the one about Camilla plotting to take the crown and marry Charles, and says that he and William begged his father not to marry her. So, bearing in mind this was a very different time in royal history, their mother had not long passed away. Um, and of course, Camilla was described as the other woman. So Prince Harry has sensationally accused Camilla of plotting to marry Charles, take the crown, and of leaking stories to the press in his bombshell memoir. Now, I will stop this story right here by saying that somebody, a well-placed somebody, has come out and said that it actually wasn't Camilla that leaked any stories about William or Harry. It was actually somebody who was in Charles's staff in the employment of. Now that doesn't mean to say that it was Charles directly doing it, but it certainly wasn't Camilla. So I think the person that was actually leaking the stories was the spin doctor involved. Now we know even this kind of last series of The Crown did tackle the fact that a spin doctor was hired to kind of rehabilitate Camilla's image with the general public. Um, because Charles felt that she was misrepresented in the media. So if anybody leaked any stories, I think it was actually him. So again, you could go back and say, well, you know, he was in the employment of Charles, but it certainly wasn't Camilla on the end of a phone ringing up the press, leaking things. So I think Harry has kind of got that a little bit distorted. The Duke of Sussex writes, shortly after our private meetings with her, she began to develop her long-term strategy, a campaign directed at marriage and with time the crown. Now again, I think this is kind of putting a little bit too much on Camilla. It wasn't Camilla that was plotting to marry Charles and take the crown. It was actually Charles. Charles wanted to marry Camilla. I'm not saying Camilla didn't want to marry him back, but it certainly wasn't, I think her pushing that narrative. It was Charles. Charles described Camilla as as an unnegotiable part of his life. So the spin doctor was most definitely hired by Charles. So, I don't really think Camilla harbored any desire necessarily to take the crown. I think she was just quite happy being in love and having the man that she loved. Anyway, he says news stories started appearing in the newspapers about her conversations with William, stories which recounted lots of small details, none of which came from my brother. So yes, potentially there were stories, but Charles would also perhaps have been party to those stories. Um, Either way, I can't actually recall what kind of stories they were that came out. This was a very, very, very long time ago. Things perhaps that are better best forgotten, but it does show that Prince Harry does hold a grudge. And these are things that he has been harbouring for a very long time. For example, like, he felt that William and Catherine should have shared perhaps some responsibility for the Nazi costume that he chose to wear. So, but again, going back to that, he had two options. So he thought that it was appropriate to wear either one option or the other. William and Catherine were just merely, saying which one they thought he should go with. He didn't necessarily have to go with that, bearing in mind he was, a 20-year-old man who was in the military at the time. I'm sure he can make decisions on his own costume, and then take any subsequent flack for it. Right, I am going to, we'll talk about the whole baby brain saga in another video. There are also obviously a few other things that I want to talk about, but I think we're going to leave it there for now. The next time I come on and do a video, we probably won't have Christmas decorations up. It's time to put them away, but I have been so busy with all the different things that have been going on with the royal family. Also, I didn't share with you what jewellery I was wearing yesterday. I totally forgot. So yesterday, it was the Brazilian aquamarine tiara and the Prince Albert brooch. Today, I am wearing the lotus flower tiara. Of course, Catherine does wear this one today. When she alternates it with the Diana Cambridge Lovers Knot tiara when she does state banquets. So I do like wearing that one. And the brooch I'm wearing is my version of a royal family order. It does have the Queen's little miniature in it, and it is on a beautiful yellow bow, which a dear friend made for me many years ago. So thank you very, very much to Dawn for making that. And I still wear it today. I wear it for my Christmas messages. So again, just to kind of close out this video, we still have lots to talk about. There will be more and more and more revelations. I think this book just kind of shows to me a serving of how deeply unhappy Harry is and has been with his life. I'm not saying, going forward, he's not going to find any happiness. He does. I do think he is in love with Meghan. Of course, he has his wonderful children, who of course have no part in this whatsoever. They are just innocents. But I do think it goes to show how much trauma Harry did suffer as a child with the loss of his mother, that he's carried through all of his adult life. It does show to me that he is a little bit, well, a lot. He's definitely lost. I think he's very misguided. And I think he's trying to rebel against things that actually could necessarily bring him peace and security and stability in his life. I think cutting ties with his family, have not been necessarily the thing that I think he thinks he wants. And at a time when his presence would be felt warmly within the royal family, after the loss of the Queen, I think there is this kind of void that he has left within the royal family, even Meghan to a certain extent. But I think they have burned so many bridges with this. I think if reconciliation is something that he has on his mind, this is not the way to go about it. And I think that it's going to take a lot and a long time for his family to trust him again. You know, how can you have personal conversations? I mean, going back to revealing about the circumcision, that's not his call to reveal that information about someone else. In fact, it's actually quite disgusting that he did that against William. Oh, also the story where he criticizes, not criticizes, he brings up William's hair loss and says that, you know, it's worse than his, and that, you know, he's looking less and less like his mother. That is a barbed insult, you know, aimed at hurting. It just goes to show how much hurt and hate he has in his heart. And I do hope that he sorts that out and gets that sorted. So until the next video, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, share, leave a comment. And from me, until next time, to you all, and goodbye.